Hi, all. These are generally conversations between adults after the children have left the table. The language can be spicy and the subjects can get saucy. So if you're ready, this is the Southern Fork. Unscripted kitchen chats and also studio chats with some of the most interesting voices in the culinary South. I'm Stephanie Burt, a food and beverage writer based in Charleston, South Carolina, who travels with her fork to write for a variety of publications, from magazines you might have on your coffee table to the website you love to visit for your favorite recipes. And I'm inviting you to come behind the scenes with me to get to know the people who make this Southern culinary landscape so special. I'm always hungry for the next bite, thirsty for that next sip, and ready for the next conversation. Let's dig in. The Southern Fork is honored to be presented again this year by Townsend Automotive in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. For more than 48 years, the Townsend family of dealerships has been a locally owned company built on service and connection with its customers. And their experienced team can walk you through the car buying process side by side, from test drive to service oil changes and beyond. Townsend goes through a rigorous vetting process to make sure that every pre-owned vehicle adheres to quality standards. And right now, there's plenty on the lot to choose from in various makes and models. Visit townsendhonda.com for current inventory, or if you're in West Alabama, stop in. Townsend Automotive salutes local entrepreneurs, from restaurateurs to podcasters, and they welcome you to be part of a community that does the same. When it comes to beer, we talk a lot about hops, but what about barley? Aaron Goss of Carolina Malt House in Cleveland, North Carolina, was a hobby beer maker who started to malt his own barley for fun while obtaining his law degree and MBA from Wake Forest University. After he learned that almost all the beer consumed in the Carolinas is made from barley grown thousands of miles away, this native of Rowan County, which is located in the middle of the Carolinas grain belt, thought, why not here? What has resulted in a few short years is the Southeast's largest malt house, serving brewers 9 varieties of malts and counting, all made from barley grown within 10 miles of the facility. And that's not because locally grown food is trendy, but because Aaron is sure his neighbors are some of the most dedicated farmers in the world. Much of the machinery for the malt house was fabricated locally. The facility operates on green principles, and with its quickly expanding production, it's bringing fresh flavor to the glasses of local beer drinkers all over the Southeast. Welcome to the Southern Fork, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you for waiting at the driveway for me. I was riding through the countryside of northwestern Rowan County, North Carolina, right?
Right.
I mean, this is not officially my old stomping grounds, but we're really only about an hour and 20 minutes from Charlotte, in between kind of Charlotte and Salisbury, where you grew up, right?
Yeah. It's a great location. We've got great access to highways 40, 77, 85, 70. Yeah. It gives us access to the whole state.
It's very smart, but I've learned really quickly today in a tour here of the malt house that you are very smart. So we're going to try to distill or brew down a little bit of all of the science that we just went through here today at Carolina Malt House. I want to start on the fact that malted barley, right, is an ingredient in beer, but we don't give it doesn't have the shiny reputation that all these hops do, like Citra, right?
Right. And so everybody knows that wine is made from grapes, but if you ask people what beer is made from, most people, the first thing that comes to mind is hops. But hops are a spice. People have been drinking beer for at least 5,500 years, and hops have only been added for about the last 500. Maybe a little longer than that, but I think originally added by German monks as a way to make the product more shelf-stable by increasing the acidity. So hops have sort of an outsized reputation, but if we say that wine is made from grapes, then it's fair to say beer is made from malt.
You were a computer programmer, right? Am I saying that right? Computer programmer? You can tell I am not computer. I am computer literate. I work in the digital world, but...
Well, you've got a great website.
Yeah, thank you. I built it myself.
Nice.
But beyond that, you were in law school, you were making your own beer, and then you got one of my favorite terms, super nerdy. You were already nerdy about making your own beer, and then you got real nerdy, and you started to fall down the malt rabbit hole, and you started to make your own malt. Tell me a little bit about that thought process.
So I started making beer when I was in law school, and I started out with kits, and then I went to buying extracts and adjusting recipes a little bit that way, and then buying malt from the homebrew store, and then I had exhausted that. The homebrew store didn't sell just barley, but I grew up near here in Salisbury, North Carolina, which is in the grain belt. So I grew up going to school with kids whose dads were grain farmers. And so when I wanted to malt my own barley, I went over and asked Johnny Moore for some barley, and he let me have 50 pounds, and I made some beer with that, and it was good. So I'm sort of skipping forward in time a little bit, but when I got married in 2013, I actually made all the beer for my wedding. It was 9 kegs of beer, and it was all gone at the end of the weekend. And I had people asking me, "Man, what made that beer so good?" And I said, "Well, it was local. It was fresh. Like any food, it's better when it's local and fresh." And that was sort of the birth of the malt house.
So grain, it's a plant, and
Right.
so freshness, it's the seed of grass. Yes, and
yes.
so barley is better when it's fresh. There's more stuff in it, good stuff, like carbohydrates. We were talking about chains of, what was it?
Starch chains, which are just chains of saccharides.
Yeah, I was going to use saccharides, but I didn't want to mess up. And that freshness really adds to a better beer because all those starch grains, that's what the yeast eats to make the beer, right?
Well, that's a big part of it. A kernel of grain is about 80% carbohydrates, like that. But that's not the only thing that gives the beer its flavor. So some of the flavor comes from unfermented sugars. Some comes from alcohol. There are lots of components. But so there's the 80% of the grain that's carbohydrate, but there's another 20% there that's made of just other stuff that all contributes to the flavor of beer, the flavor that you know as beer.
Those X factors.
Yeah. And barley has a rich microbiome, and all the byproducts of those microbes, biological processes go into the flavor of the beer. So all of that factors in, and the barley is alive, and just like any living thing that we eat, plants or animals, it just tastes better fresh. So
I just love this. I love my job because I meet people like you. So 9 kegs later, you go, I'm going to make a malt house. I'm going to buy 60 acres. And we're going to start fabricating machinery. And a lot of the machinery in this building, most of the machinery in this building are things that you've designed or amended from original designs to build your own at a different, much lower cost, right?
Right. So there are a few companies that make malting machinery, but prior to building this place, I toured malt houses all around the world. And I found that a lot of that off-the-shelf machinery, if it breaks, you're kind of beholden to the manufacturer, and things do break. I mean, grain's heavy.
And do you feel comfortable telling people how you figured out what to do?
Well, I had very carefully measured my hand, and then also become practiced in determining whether a shaft was, say, 1.5 inches or 2 inches or 3 inches, or a running strip was 2.5 inches or 3 inches, just based on the dimensions of my hand. So I looked at various pieces of dimensional steel and
just
practiced
on the tour,
holding them. No, but before taking the tours, I went and checked out standard sizes of dimensional steel and measured my hand against them so that I could tell a 2-inch shaft from a 2.5-inch shaft on site, and then really tried to get the kind of precision to tell 50 millimeters from 2 inches, but that's tough. So,
and then
I would take a tour and then go back to my hotel room and scribble furiously, what I had managed to learn.
That's pretty amazing.
And now these malt houses that I was touring were 200-ton malt houses, so it's not like I copied the design, because I'm only a 22-ton size. So I would try to reverse engineer it, and then part of what I did was I referred to academic materials. Like I minored in German in college, and there were some great articles in this old German academic journal called Brauwissenschaft. And my sister lives in Germany, and she was able to pull some of those articles from the library at her school. And I mean, these are from like 1914, 1915. So she was able to copy them and send them to me. And then, so reading that.
Hey, sis, I have a favor. I need you to find some things from 1914 for me. Do you mind?
So then, reading all that and studying these malt houses and figuring out, okay, well, why is the grain bed this depth? Can I make it bigger? Why is the bolt this size? And then I was able to scale down those designs and design my own smaller machine and figure out, how big each bolt needed to be and what sort of forces would be involved. And
at the end of all that day, you would have a beer.
Well, it took me about 4 months. So I had a beer at the end of those 4 months.
So you started building this. You had to have permits. This is an agricultural business, but it's also manufacturing. There's a lot of state hoops and permits and stuff that you have to jump through. You mentioned that when you decided to put a malt house here in North Carolina, and today you're the largest malt house in the Southeast, right?
Yes.
Yes. The officials that you were working with said you cannot grow barley in North Carolina, right?
Well, you can definitely grow barley in North Carolina. There was no confusion about that. But I won't name names, but we did have people we had people telling us that you can't grow malting quality barley in the Carolinas. But the reason they thought that was that they were trying to do it in the coastal plain. North Carolina has invested a lot in trying to find a replacement crop for tobacco, and so they were looking at malting barley, but they were trying it out in the eastern plains, and the humidity and the rainfall situation out there is not right for growing malting barley. But North Carolina also has a grain belt, which we're sitting in the middle of right here.
I'm very tucked in and comfortable in the grain belt here.
Good.
Yeah.
But it spans several counties. And it is a great place to grow grain. And when much of the state has been in tobacco, this area has still grown small grains, row crops. And that's actually one reason a lot of the downtowns in this area are very well preserved, because they never had that tobacco crash that killed off the local economy. So really great area for growing grains, and actually the barley that we get out of this area, and we've worked a lot with our growers and very much appreciate their patience in figuring this out with us. Would have gotten nowhere without those generational farmers whose granddads knew how to grow barley and knew the ways in which it was different from growing wheat in this area, and that knowledge had been passed down.
Right.
And now guys my age and younger are out there growing barley again. But without them, we never would have figured it out. But we are able to grow world-class barley in this area, world-class malting quality barley. Our first year in operation, and we've only gotten better since then, our first year in operation, there is a worldwide malt competition called the Malt Cup. We placed third among entrants from 7 countries. Beers made with our malt have won at least silver in global competitions. The best beer in North Carolina right now is made with our malt. The best beer in South Carolina is made with our malt.
And those two are?
Oh gosh, I think the contest winner in North Carolina was Cabarrus, and it's called Daisy something. And the South Carolina winner was from Carolina Barnhouse, and I think it's called June Princess. Mm. So but we're very proud. I mean, many beers made with our malt have won medals in the Great American Beer Fest, and I mean, very well represented among category winners and other states' beer competitions.
And you're sitting in the middle, and you're working with farmers, and you're also working with brewers. Mm-hmm. And so you're asking questions of each to learn this. This is a 4-year-old business, but it's operating like much older because you're curious. You're asking questions. So one of the things that you do here is you have a silo, which allows you to malt 4 silos, right? Mm-hmm. Which allows you to malt continuously throughout the year, providing consistent product to brewers. Mm-hmm. And fresh product, which is, once again, really, really important to that. But barley only is grown once a year here. It's a once-a-year crop in the Piedmont of North Carolina. So the silos you mentioned are essential. Can you tell me why they're essential?
So because we've committed to be totally locally grown, which... we do bring in like some barley from Tennessee, malt it here, sell it back into Tennessee. But if you're buying our core products, they're totally locally grown. But in order to make that commitment, I think I mentioned earlier, really nobody was growing barley here. So 10 years ago, they might have grown barley for animal feed, but even the local feed mills took barley out of the animal feed mix. So coming in and asking farmers to grow barley, one of the big questions was, well, where do we put it after we grow it? There's no malting barley elevator around here. You're starting a brand new industry to this area, so there's no infrastructure in place. So in order to buy local malting barley, we had to build our own grain elevator. So we did that right here on site. And like you mentioned
you do.
earlier,
I mean, I think about building grain elevators all the time. I just don't do it.
But yeah, like you mentioned earlier, we located in the middle of the grain belt, and so it's a very convenient place for that elevator to be located. As of, last year, our furthest farmer was 10 miles away. So that enables our growers to actually bring the barley to us as they're pulling it out of the field. They don't even have to handle it one time. They just put it in a truck straight off the harvester. The truck comes straight here, unloads, goes back, gets another load. So very efficient unloading process, minimizes damage to the grain due to handling. All of our grain handling equipment here is very gentle on the grains. So versus running through an auger, you're going to chip some kernels. That would contribute to a lower quality beer. So we're all about maximizing beer quality.
And then on the other side, from the brewer's standpoint, some of the things that you talked about were the barley that you're able to process here has a 99% germination rate, which means that it's alive, right? When it goes through the malting process.
Yeah. So in order to be malted, each kernel has to be alive. If it's not germinating through the process, then it's rotting. Rotten kernels don't make good beer. So
it's kind of like sprouted grain. Right?
Well, it is sprouted grain.
Yeah, it's sprouted. But I mean, people know about sprouted grain for their Ezekiel bread. This is basically your sprouting grain.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, we do stop it before the actual, they call it the acrospire, that first leaf before that emerges out of the end of the kernel. But the root length is one of our indicators on how fully modified it is, how fully germinated it is. So yeah, that's what we're doing here. So in addition to that grain elevator, we also built a seed cleaning operation out back, and really worked a lot to tune that machinery so that we can. I mean, we start with great quality grain every time anyway, but we clean it to an even higher standard. And by the time it comes off of our machines, I mean, we always have a 99+% germination rate going into our process, which gives us great quality.
And you also clean it of dust, so it's a less dusty.
Yeah, so after our malting process...
That's just a little nicety for you brewers out there. Because, when you're popping open those bags, 50-pound bags, you get a little puff.
Yeah. So yeah, when I built the place, I was actually going around to brewers and asking, "What don't you like about malt? What could we do better than what you have now?" And it was actually Chad Henderson down at Noda who told me he didn't like how dusty it was. And I thought, well, how the heck am I going to fix that? But I actually ended up installing a vacuum cleaning system. I designed and built a vacuum cleaning system up there so all of the grain that comes out of here is vacuum cleaned. And I've had brewers tell me that they like the fact that our malt is less dusty. It's a more pleasant experience for them and also makes for faster lautering times. Yeah, nice to hear.
Yeah. There was a lot of things. I mean, you're young and you've done a lot of things here, but one of the things that I think I'm most excited about, besides the fact that all of the local stuff that makes me super excited, is that none of the water, because you need water to sprout the grain, otherwise known as maltigrain, Southern Fork listeners, in the beer industry. And then you dry that grain out, but you have gray water. You have wastewater.
Right.
And so what do you do with the wastewater?
It's not cost effective to recycle the water within the malting process. But one reason we located on 60 acres out here is so that we could irrigate that wastewater onto those 60 acres and grow grass for cows. So the wastewater from the malting process has nitrogen in it, not a huge amount, but some amount of nitrogen in it, and so
otherwise known as fertilizer.
Exactly. So irrigating that onto the property out here helps grow grass, and so then we harvest that grass and feed it to our cows down on the lower pasture. And
then you also have how many varieties of blueberries?
284 bushes and 7 varieties of blueberries out there.
And figs.
Figs and pawpaws.
So you transplanted pawpaws. That's, and then you remember that I did an episode on pawpaws. I mean, that's a whole other category of discussion here. But instead of that water going into our rivers and lakes, that kind of thing, or a treatment plant, it's actually being rehabbed naturally through regenerative agriculture, the actual ecosystem of 60 acres of grass.
Yep. Yeah. So,
What do you do with the blueberries? You give them to brewers to make beer?
We'll probably get there eventually. Right now, we eat them. It's nice, and it's a big job picking all those blueberries every year. But they're nice. But I do want to talk about the pawpaws too, though, because I get excited about those too.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
When I started building this place, it was just me and 2 other guys on a bulldozer excavator and soil compactor. And but as we were clearing the land, I was seeing native pawpaw trees out here, and I got excited about that because I can't remember his name, but there was a farmer who big molasses maker, and he showed me some pawpaw trees on his property, and that was my first taste of a pawpaw, and so I got excited to find some of those trees here, and we transplanted some of them, bought a few more, and we've got a little pawpaw orchard going over there.
You got an orchard. Pawpaw plants. I mean, this is like a dreamland for anyone who wants to eat local, because it comes with beer too.
I am someone who wants to eat local, so I've done my best to make it a dreamland for me.
Yeah. Well, this has been a journey, and now, a lot of past Southern Fork guests are using your malt. You have successfully built a factory in the middle of the county in which you grew up in, and are really changing food systems in a way that's delicious, but really isn't doing anything but adding more money back into the county.
Right.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's like a lifetime amount of work. So you already did that in 4 years. So what's making you hungry? What's percolating next for you?
Oh, gosh. Well, business-wise, there's a lot of room to keep growing this. So there are 2 production lines out there in this building, and I'm starting work now on the 3rd one, and then we'll do the 4th one. But because we build everything ourselves and design it ourselves, we are able to add production very cost effectively. So I'm trying to bring in more capital to keep this growing. My typical farmer only has about 5% of their acreage dedicated to us, and so and that they would love to have more. And we can grow world-class barley.
You pay premium prices for
premium product.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is something that's very valuable. I mean, we've been growing barley. So we actually started growing barley in 2016. So we've been doing that for 6 years now and have really reliably great quality. So I built this building to house 4 production lines. So we have room to build 2 more here. But this could easily, I mean, we could be doing 20 times as much business very easily. So I hope to see that happen. And so, yeah, in the immediate term, I mean, that's really, I'm able to put all of my energy into this place. So, for example, I just finished building that roaster that I showed you up front, and that's producing great quality. And let's see, we're excited to release our second roasted malt pretty soon. And then, but there are, we could easily produce 15, 20 varieties of roasted malt, so we'll get all those going.
So roasted malt, just quickly, what does it do for beer making?
So your listeners may be familiar with Marzen and Oktoberfest beer styles,
yes,
which are sort of a pleasant reddish color. So any beer up to that dark can pretty much be made solely off the kiln. No roaster required. Most of that color comes from a compound called melanoidin, which we can develop during kilning.
That's my next tattoo. Nice. Melanoidin.
So we can develop that during kilning. So we can get you any color up through about an Oktoberfest or a Marzen, just with the kiln. But for darker beers or for any sort of coffee or chocolatey flavor, or to make like a crystal malt, which is very important for head retention and body, those styles require a roaster.
Got it. That makes complete sense. Yeah.
So we're working to. We've made a biscuit malt so far. We think we'll release a roasted barley pretty soon.
I had a little munch of the biscuit malt. It was delicious.
Yeah, and
very biscuity, like wheat thins,
and it's freshly toasted.
Yeah, it's very toasty.
It really makes a difference. It'll go stale if you don't preserve it, and so that's one thing we really pride ourselves on, is delivering malt to our customers at peak flavor.
What is one aspect of the shop that you literally built for yourself out of a field that really meshes with the natural aspect of your personality?
Well, I love figuring out how and why things work, and that is a piece of this business that I've done the most on, is the figuring out how and why things work and then implementing them at a different scale, much smaller scale than most of the industry. And then also just the great fun people that I've gotten to work with. Like, we're doing something pretty cool out here. So my original business partner, Steve Balk, was great to work with on all this. And then my head maltster, Mark Van Wagenberg, maintenance guy. I mean, we've attracted some really fun people to work with out here. Really talented people, really skilled people. And so that's a lot of fun too. But the part that I enjoy the most is figuring out how things work, how to build them. So, and
at a large scale. Quick fire. What is one thing keeping you up at night?
My kids. Well, actually, that's more. They wake me up in the morning. What keeps me up at night? Not as much as used to. So I used to have to come out here at 3 a.m. whenever the grain needed to be turned, or whenever something went wrong, which happened a couple of times. I would have to come out here and fix it. But lately, there's the problems everybody's having with inflation and fuel prices and all that. But it makes work, and I do stay up sometimes doing that work. But it's not too anxiety inducing, fortunately. So really just figuring out how to grow. That's the big thing.
Well, there's something that I reserve known as the Southern Fork Picnic Basket. And so with this, I can time travel for you. I can go back in time and ask anybody to make something for you that you just want to have one more bite of. I can source for you. I can cook a little bit. And I would love to just bring you some of your favorite things. They don't have to go together in a composed meal. Doesn't actually have to be a picnic. It can be 100% carbs if you want. That's what mine is, depending on the day of the week. And I know that it's going to shift because we're people who like food and drink. Yeah. So what is it going to be today? What can I put in that basket for you?
Oh, boy. I like to cook. I feel like I've kind of figured out how to cook most things the way I like them. I guess my dream meal might be... I'm a big guy. My thoughts always turn to just rib roast and baked potatoes. But when I have people over, I think maybe a lot of people's favorite dish. I love this too. Like schnitzel, bratwurst, sauerkraut. I just had a batch of sauerkraut finish up at home. It tastes great. Mm-hmm. That's a great.
So that minor in German is more than just a language moment.
Oh, yeah. I actually first started studying German when I was a little kid, and I picked up my granddad's war-era German textbooks. He served with the U.S., but one of the things he did was translate. Mm-hmm. And I learned a lot of German initially from a little manual called Kriegsdeutsch, which means war German. So I learned the words for artillery and tank and all that. Yeah.
So, is there anybody that made something, or do you, like, when you travel and you deliver malt to brewers, do you eat out when you're there? Is there any special dish that you would like from a place that you've eaten?
So, I'm a bad person to ask this question, because like with beer,
it can be all beer.
Yeah, I love the variety.
Fine.
And I love the variety of things I get to taste at all the different breweries. Like they'll all have their own special dish, and there's something they feel they do particularly well, and they're usually right. So it's like talking to them about why you should support a local grain industry. It's in addition to making your beer better, it's better to have more growing areas. Like there can be a crop failure in Canada that affects us not at all. And but yeah, I mean, variety's good, and I'm sorry to give you the
I like it all.
Wimp out answer to that question, the cheesy answer.
So we'll just do like rib roast and potatoes.
That's pretty much, sure. yeah.
And I mean, some beers.
That never fails. Yeah, and some beers. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
Pretzels and
Okay.
Never fails. Yeah.
All right, soft pretzels or crunchy pretzels?
Oh, soft. Yeah.
Okay, with mustard.
Yeah. Got to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if people want to learn more about Carolina Malt House and the really kind of just calmly amazing things that are happening here in the Piedmont of North Carolina, helmed by Aaron, you can go to thesouthernfork.com. I'm going to have links there as well as images so you can see the face behind the voice if you like what you hear. I love driving over country roads to find new stories to share with you. So there are more than 270 episodes in the archives based on my work as a food writer. So please, the easiest way to make sure that those come to your podcast app every week is to subscribe. So thank you so much for inviting me, or not turning me away, because I kind of invited myself, but not turning me away in Cleveland, North Carolina today.
Well, thanks for coming. We're always happy to share our story.
Yeah.
So, thanks a bunch for coming.
Great, and cheers.
Cheers.
Hello, and welcome to Talking with My Mouth Full. I just was delighted to have the chance to go a little bit further afield into the country of North Carolina to visit with Aaron for this episode of Carolina Malt House. And I just wanted to share with you that I have a little nerdy thing about what I call food factories. Now, of course, I love to be in professional kitchens, and I really, really enjoy being out on farms. But throughout my writing career, which has been extremely varied, I've gotten the opportunity to really visit a few food factories, and I would consider the Malt House a food factory. Also, breweries and distilleries are actually making things that you consume. But I've also been to a pasta factory before. I grew up in Charlotte, home of Lay's potato chips. And so my sister got to go to the Lay's factory and eat fresh potato chips off of the conveyor belt on her field trip, but I did not. But I have been to the Nutty Buddy factory. Yeah, Nutty Buddies. You know, the ice cream treat that's in a sugar cone, vanilla ice cream topped with chocolate and peanuts. Yeah, I went to that factory and watched those ice cream cones get dipped in that chocolate. I've also, most weirdly, been to a gummy factory, which wasn't for gummy bears. It was for gummy novelty items. They made all kinds of other gummy candy, like gummy worms, and they actually even made a gummy watch, which was huge. And I don't think any child should consume that in one sitting, but nevertheless, it was very cool to see. So anyway, I am always going to go to what I consider a food factory because I love to see how things are made. And I think there's a Food Network show completely dedicated to just this. But I hope that you will ask this season, this spring, when you are sipping that local beer at your local brewery, ask them where they got their malt. You never know. It could be the Carolina Malt House, my latest and maybe greatest food factory. Thanks so much for listening, and I will talk with you next time.
You've been listening to The Southern Fork. I can't wait to bring you more culinary conversations, but in the meantime, I have one question. Are you going to eat all that?